Today we're at the home of Lynda Carrier, who may look familiar to many of you as she's been on the show quite a lot. She is one of our departmental research specialists, but today we're talking to her in a different capacity. We are at her home garden, and it's always nice to see that someone has a hobby that follows their career as well. And today she's going to show us around her home garden and how they've repurposed a lot of things to make a beautiful garden.
I'm Lynda Carrier. This is my home garden near Stillwater, Oklahoma, and it's fall time season, so I've started some fall vegetable crops. And as you can see, I still have quite a few things from summer that are still in the garden. I've got tomatoes and several peppers. The asparagus is ferned out right now, but I have taken out quite a few things, and that's where it's given me a little bit of space to do some of this fall gardening. I also had several rows of sweet corn in there this spring, and then I decided to plant some more sweet corn again, so it's now in the process of tasseling and silking, and we should have corn in another probably 3 weeks or a month. But anyways, on the fall gardening, I've got some straw down here for mulch, and it's going to sprout too, because I've got wheat coming up, but that's okay because that's a good cover crop. But one of the things I like to do is everything I've got out here is on drip tape, and it just simplifies my life so I don't have to water every night. And so anyways, I've got drip tape, and I've got some cabbage and some broccoli here, and I've planted some other seedlings of some other things here. I actually have a row of green beans that are trying to come up here because I thought maybe I'd try to do some fall green beans. But on our garden area here, we've got to try to keep the Bermuda grass out, which it's very hard to plant a garden on the flat without Bermuda grass coming in. So we've got railroad ties buried down, and then we've got this border around it to hopefully keep out as much Bermuda as possible, but it's always a constant problem trying to keep it out. One of the things we like to do is like if I have a lot of bad produce and stuff, rather than it going to waste, it goes to the chickens. So I've got about a dozen chickens in a coop back here, and usually I just give them the bad tomatoes and the bad cucumbers, and anything that's bad they get. And they seem to like it, so they're happy with that. This is our water garden feature, and I guess about 4 years ago we had this idea that we wanted to have a big water garden feature, or actually my husband did, Rusty. We had a small one out in the front of the house, and we wanted to put a porch on, so our idea was to have this bigger water garden, and it was really his idea. But anyways, we'd had a little fire pit here to begin with, and then we decided that we needed a little bit more out here. So we came up, I guess I kind of looked up some different ideas as far as what we wanted to do, and I wanted to have a layer. I wanted it to have a layer effect. The ground here is really flat, so I wanted to give it some dimension. And so my husband, he's in the ditching and excavating business, and so he had a leftover manhole. And we used that for our top tier and put our liner in, and then various big rocks that he gets from various different jobs when they dig up stuff. And so we had a lot of rocks to work with. And he dug it out, and we started shaping it up and using the rocks and forming it all, and put our liners in, obviously before the rocks, and then just kind of went off of that. And then I guess the landscaping we just kind of added as we got finished with the pond part of it. So that's kind of how we're doing it. We've got fish, we've got koi. We also have our little fire pit area, and then we put up some cedar poles and lighting and stuff, so in the evenings, on cool fall evenings, we can sit around the fire pit and do some s'mores and have some fun stuff like that. But we did the stones. These were some stones my husband got from various jobs that we refurbished or recycled. We also have this shady area in right by our house, and I like to have a lot of rocks and various things around here. I grew up on a farm, and we live on a farm now, so I really like to use old wagon wheels and old farm equipment around in the landscape just to kind of accentuate what we have. We like to use rocks and various other things in our yard. We've got several bricks that I've used to make the sidewalks with. These are all things that we've kind of recycled over the years. And then we just add some other elements into it. We've got a little bridge because this is kind of a low area in the yard where water runs through, and so my husband has put together several things over the years that we just use to accentuate all of our rocks and our patios and everything. This is a greenhouse that my husband and I just started working on, actually in the spring, and it's taken us quite a while to get it all together. We started out, before we ever even decided the size of it or anything, we had a bunch of old windows that mostly were given to us, and we took all those old windows and figured out how to lay it out, and that kind of dictated our size of the greenhouse based on that. And we wrote a lot of things down trying to figure out our 2x4s and the distance and everything, and eventually came up with how big our footings needed to be, and then we did the stem wall and then just built up from there. We are still in the process of getting it finished, so I don't really have much for plants in here just yet, but we've got electricity in it. Most of the windows open, so hopefully we'll have good ventilation. And then I've got a fan set up on a temperature, so it kicks on when the temperature rises. And it's also reversible, so it can force the air through the shutter if I want to have it flipped that way to pull the air through. So we'll just play with that a little bit just to try to figure out what works best. But mainly the greenhouse I want to use for about 3 seasons, fall, winter, and spring, and then the summer I'll probably not have much of anything in it. But I like to start vegetable crops and stuff in the fall as well as in the early spring. And eventually I'd like to do some hydroponics in there. When we started with the greenhouse, this was existing, actually all this area was already our garden. So we were trying to figure out the location to put the greenhouse, and this made the most sense. At one time we thought about adding it on to our shop, and we decided that was not a good idea. So we decided for this whole separate structure, and the best place was in the garden. So we actually transitioned the garden to the east and extended it out this way. That way I still had just as much space in the garden, and so we ended up with basically the same amount of space in the garden without having to take away once we put this greenhouse in. One other thing in the greenhouse, my husband made a nice bench for me in there for potting and working with, and so he's done a very nice job of making a lot of things over the years. Thank you for coming out to our house, and we appreciate you looking at our gardens and everything we've done and all the things we've used with recycling our projects with.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. You can also find even more videos on our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.